Oh, actually wanted to start on this tab. Hello and welcome to the stream. My name is Dr. Rachel Tapman and my YouTube channel is for anyone who cares about language, technology, and other people. And speaking of caring about things, I voted. US folks, have you voted yet? You should vote. Today's the day if you have not voted already. Little PSA. So today we're going to be starting on a new project, and I sort of hinted a while ago that I've been thinking about doing this for a while, and I finally got so, I don't know, it's fed up is the right term, but like, frustrated enough, I guess, that I decided to build something. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a project on moon NLP. So I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of a background on what my problem is, and then we'll start to talk about some different sort of solutions. So some of you may be familiar with this. Actually, I would assume most of you are familiar with this. Most calendar stuff, certainly in the US, is done on the solar calendar, right? One second, let me just pause this. Mute that. Okay. It's done on the solar calendar, right? So solar months, January, February, March, etc. However, there are the ghosts, I guess you could say, spooky, of a couple lunar calendars floating around. And one of the places those get used is for gardening, and particularly in like the oral planting agricultural tradition in Virginia, especially sort of like central Virginia over all the way to West Virginia, which is where I am. So what this means is if you are asking an older person for gardening advice, there's a non-0% chance that they're going to tell you to do stuff based on the moon. And some of that is stuff that's pretty easy to look up and do, right? Like on the full moon, on the half moon, on the new moon. But some of it is using named moons. So I mentioned we have like this ghost of a lunar calendar, and actually I think it's the ghost of a couple lunar calendars. So in the UK, they have a lunar calendar that's tied to the solar calendar. So you'll have like different named moons, like the Yule moon is the first full moon after the winter equinox, Yule. And then you'll have, you know, other named moons around, that sort of thing. And in the US, our moon naming convention is different. It's got a little bit of overlap with the UK tradition, presumably due to immigration and colonialism. But also there are a number of sort of indigenous cultures that use moon calendars that have been synchronized, sort of folded in Appalachian culture in particular. Cherokee influences are very strong. Of course, less strong after Andrew Jackson did horrible war crimes. Well, not war crimes, just crimes against humanity and a genocide. Anyway, but the cultural remnants are there, and part of the way that those cultural remnants are there are in these moon names. Now, if someone just tells you to do something on the goose moon, I don't know about you, I don't know when the goose moon is, right? Like, I don't know when that is. And that's, you know, not something I can put on my solar calendar, right? It's hard to, I use an app called Todoist to organize my to-dos and my to-do lists and send me reminders. And it's really great, and they have very robust, you know, NLU for extracting dates and adding them to calendars. But they don't know about the goose moon either. So my goal is to create an NLP tool that will let me take in these moon names and turn them into Gregorian, Julian, whichever one is the one that we use, calendar dates on a given year, so that I can use them for my, you know, planting, harvesting, etc., etc., etc. So that's my goal. The challenge here, is that I mentioned that these are sort of based on like these ghosts of lunar calendars, and there's a lot of them together. So probably the most commonly cited resource that people will talk about when, you know, planting by the moon is the Old Farmer's Almanac, right? Like My grandpa used this on the farm, very well known in the US. And then, so these are their, you know, most common names that they use, and I believe they are based in Maine, so these are not going to be quite so right. These are probably going to draw on different Native American you know, terms and derived names, but of course, because the Farmer's Almanac is so widely distributed, these also have like a big you know, effect on stuff. And some of the things are, you know, fairly similar. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a hunter moon in the UK system as well. I'm pretty sure the corn moon is the grain moon, again in the UK system. And these, of course, will differ by hemisphere because they are seasonal. So these are the names that the Old Farmer's Almanac uses for the full moons. And there are sometimes 12 and sometimes 13 full moons in a year. And if there's 13, the extra is going to be the blue moon, and it will occur somewhere in the middle here. Again, you can understand how someone telling you, if you're not super familiar with the system, when to do something based on one of these things is going to be confusing. So I would love to use computers to turn these sort of things into things that are more useful and anchored for me. But just to cut you off of slice of what some of these moon names are. So these are, again, the Old Farmer's Almanac, probably one of the more commonly discussed moon names. I think there's like a Llewellyn book that people keep mentioning to me that focuses a little bit more on like zodiacal signs, I guess. I'm just trying to plan things at a good time. So the Farmer's Almanac names are the wolf moon, the snow moon, the worm moon, the pink moon, the flower moon, the strawberry moon, the buck moon, the sturgeon moon, the corn moon, the hunter moon, the beaver moon, and the cold moon. And I would say these are not all names that I am familiar with. Like, I wouldn't say the sturgeon moon. I don't think I've heard that one. Do we get sturgeon? Maybe we get them in the James, but certainly not above the fall lines. I wouldn't imagine. They're really big. You get them in the James. I don't know that you get them up in the mountains, so I don't know that you would have a moon named after something that doesn't occur there, right? So I'll post this link in the chat if you would like to check it out. And keep in mind, this is going to be super US-centric. So this... you know, they are talking about how this is sort of a syncretization of different systems of naming the moons and lunar months. So the wolf moon, which is the term that I would use, comes from England, the UK. I believe it is also used in Scotland and Ireland and Wales and, you know, other, I think it's the whole UK. I don't think it is specifically English. But like the strawberry moon is definitely the US name, and I believe that comes from the Cherokee, potentially. Yes. And as they talk about, traditionally in Native American names, each moon name was applied to the entire lunar month where it had occurred, starting with either the new or full moon. So if someone gives you a lunar month, it may be starting at the full moon, it may be starting at the new moon. And it's all very... it's all very informal. It's all very oral. I haven't been able to find a lot of written resources about this, but like, you know, you'll talk to older folks and they'll tell you things about when to do garden stuff, and it'll be based on the moon. So, yes. And if you didn't have that growing up, which I didn't, I don't think my mom or dad, either of them, really talked about moons with planting, but I believe my mom's parents might have, and I think my great grandparents might have as well, but I never got that firsthand, right? I never met my mom's parents. Anyway, so just to give you an idea of sort of the degree of synonymy that there is here, we have a bunch of names here. So January, again, the named moons may or may not occur in a specific month, given the presence of the blue moons. I believe that the Farmer's Almanac moon system is tied to the solar month. But some other names for the wolf moon are the Canada goose moon, the center moon, the cold moon, the freeze up moon, the frost exploding moon, the great moon, greetings moon, hard moon, severe moon, and spirit moon. February, the snow moon, the bald eagle moon, the bear moon, the black bear moon, the month of the bony moon, eagle moon, groundhog moon, hungry moon. Hungry moon is the one that I think I have most often heard for February, and the raccoon moon. March, worm moon. Definitely I call it worm moon. Crow comes back moon, eagle moon, goose moon. This one's a goose moon. This one's also a goose moon. So if someone just says the goose moon, they could mean either. You can see why I want a system that can sort of automate some of this trying to figure out dates from these words process. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are I'm pretty sure I call April, I've heard April called the frog moon more than the pink moon. I think here in Virginia, by April, we've had phlox out for quite a while. We tend to get wildflowers starting in March, maybe sometimes in February. Hey, Mandel. Welcome to this weird project we're working on. So, as you can see, oh wait, this one is the frog moon. Also, this one is the frog moon. Okay, they're both frog moons. Cool, cool, cool. And a lot of these are also going to be seasonal and regional. Like, when do your frogs break up from hibernation is going to probably affect which one you're more likely to call the frog moon. Definitely call June the strawberry moon. Buck moon. I'm not super familiar with any of these names. Maybe the corn moon? Harvest moon? Isn't the harvest moon generally in October? Early October? Anyway, you can see, okay, so the harvest moon can also be in October. There's an asterisk here. According to one tradition, which the Old Farmer's Almanac honors, the harvest moon is always the full moon that occurs closest to the September equinox. Okay, so they are, so here in this tradition, they are linking the moon names to the solar dates, right? Because the equinox is a solar date. Most years it falls in September. Every 3 years it falls in October. Astronomical seasons don't match up with the lunar month. If the harvest moon occurs in October, the September full moon is usually called the corn moon instead. Similarly, the hunter's moon always follows the harvest moon. Note that these last two conditions are not according to Native American tradition. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the hunter's moon and harvest moon comes from the UK tradition. So you can see the complexity of this task, right? So it's actually two tasks. Let's pop over into VS Code and I'll start making some notes. There is a long tradition in the US, Virginia. It's most of the US, right? Because the farmers all in the Eastern question mark? I don't know how widespread this is either. Of naming full moons and using this lunar calendar to denote the general time range of natural events, and thus when to do various garden tasks. Right, so I'm more thinking, what I'm more interested in is like, which span do you harvest X in? Which span do you plant X in? Because a lunar month has about a 20-day wiggle room one way or the other. Rachel, they're only 28, 29 days. Yeah. But it's a way of sort of stochastically delimiting a span of time. And then of course you'd use your best judgment within it about when in that span of time, given the general weather conditions and whatever it is that you're planting or harvesting or weeding, et cetera, what conditions it favors. But it's sort of a way to, anchor with a certain degree of fuzziness your planting, et cetera, dates. Each moon has a variety of names, some of which overlap. I would like a NLU system which can take in a moon name and translate it to a... Do we use the Julian or the Gregorian calendar? Anyone know off the top of their head? It's definitely one of the two. Let's see. Is it the Julian? Right? Because the Julian calendar has July in it. Took effect in 709. Okay, yes, so it looks like Julian calendar date or span. Yeah, so basically if someone tells me, you gotta do that before the goose moon, when is the goose moon that I should be doing it before? And then I can add it to my, various and sundry. Actually, why don't I put myself over here? And then I can add it to my various and sundry task lists and know when that time is. That's my goal. That's what I would like to do. You can see some of the potential issues here. So MVP features, a list of synonym names, moon names, and sources, right? Because like a moon name from like Ohio is not going to be as relevant as one from, Virginia for me, because I'm in Virginia, and all of these like dates and things are going to be super duper local, right? Which, so it looks like almost like, this one. So it almost seems like, what moon has what name is kind of like potentially the USDA zones, right? So like if January is the goose moon, it means you're seeing gooses in January. If March is the goose moon, it means you're seeing geeses in March. So that might tell me something about where each of these names is used. If April is the frog moon, you're seeing, frogs in April. If May is the frog moon, you're seeing frogs in May. So I'm guessing that the April moon being the frog moon is probably a little bit more southerly, and the May moon being the frog moon is probably a little bit more northerly. Yeah. So again, it's a complex project, and you can see why me, as a person who is trying to translate these things into concrete actions, has been running into a little bit of a struggle. And it's also low in anthropology, right? All right, so I want a list of synonym moon names and sources, because the source may matter. A tool which can translate a moon name and given date into a specific date. E.g., the next full, strawberry. Right? So the next full strawberry moon, and this is what I've been doing when people give me advice like this, is, okay, so the next full strawberry moon is going to be in July. Actually, the almanac will probably tell me for 22. So it was June 14th, 2022 was the full strawberry moon of 2022. I'm actually just like the last full strawberry moon on, what's today? November 8, 2022 would be, what was the date again? Oh, sorry, I'm in this tab. What was the date again? The date was June 14th. That's what I want. I just want to know what the Julian calendar date for a named moon is. However, because there are a warning if a named moon may correlate may mean more than one moon. All right. That's the general idea. Ugh. So that's what I want to do. Very niche. Very niche. If someone else has done an NLU project on this, I don't know about it. I think this is kind of like a me problem, but that's okay. I can solve a me problem. And, you know, I'm always talking about how I prefer more specific language projects. Well, guess what? This one is specific. Pretty specific to me. So additional features that could be interesting include the moon phases. Actually, I'm not going to include the full there. To start with, only use the full moon, right? Because once we include the phases, then we have to answer the question, is a lunar month, option to toggle lunar month starting on new or full or half moon. I guess if it's 3 options, it's not a toggle, right? Because, you know, something that the almanac was talking about is some of these lunar month systems start on the full moon, some of these lunar month systems start on the half moon, etc., etc. And given that there's, you know, a 20-day wiggle room, more or less, on when the specific full moon occurs, issue. Another potential thing that we could do is a blue moon, because I mentioned in a year where there are 13 full moons, one of them becomes a blue moon. Which one becomes a blue moon, I believe, depends on which calendar you're using. Toggle for more or less Eurocentric system. I don't know. So using English variants or more US variants. I'm obviously going, which include Indigenous names. I'm going to start with the ones that are most relevant for me, so I'm not going to do the English system. Also, I think the English system would be a little bit easier because I believe they are all tied to solar dates, as I mentioned. So like the almanac was mentioning, the thing where the hunter's moon always follows the harvest moon is specifically a European thing and doesn't come from these Indigenous American traditions. And just to give you an idea of, you know, what sort of specific traditions did. So this is there we go. Now you can look at what I'm looking at. So this is a page from Indian Country Today, and it is a article by Connie, Konnie LeMay, from 2017, updated in 2018. And what it has is a bunch of examples of moon names from different tribes, right? So for the Ojibwe, I'm going to read the translated bits because I'm going to read the translated names. January would be the Great Spirit Moon. February would be the Sucker Moon. March would be the Hard Crust of Snow Moon. April would be the Maple Sugar Moon. May would be the Flower Moon. So the Great Lakes are north of where I am. So for us, we tend to get, like I said, flowers earlier in the year because it's a little bit warmer sooner. June is the Strawberry Moon. July is the halfway through summer moon. August is the Ricing Moon, time for wild ricing. So a lot of these are more based on sort of foraging activities, right? Strawberries are generally foraged. Wild rice is always foraged. You can't grow it, to my knowledge. September is the leaves changing color moon. October is the falling leaves moon. November is the ice is forming moon. And December is the little spirit moon. The Dene names are different. So January here is the frying snow, melting snow for water source. February are little eagles. March is a word that mimics the eaglet's first sounds. So I guess it would be like the cheap moon. That's really cool. April is little leaves, May is big leaves, June is small planting, July is big planting. So here we start to bring in some of these agricultural names. So these are specifically Navajo names. August is the small harvest, September is the big harvest. October is back-to-back, summer back-to-back with winter, November is slender wind, and December is big wind. The Oneida names, so this is more New York, so sort of north again of where we are. January is someone's ears are freezing, February is midwinter, March is the day is cut in two, split days. April, it's thundering, May, they plant, so there's an agricultural one. June, strawberry, so there's a probably a foraging one. Potentially also an agricultural one. I'm not that familiar with agricultural traditions around strawberries of Indigenous peoples in this area. My impression is that they're usually foraged because that's what folks generally do today. But I could be wrong. If anyone has more information, please feel free to share it. July is the string bean or green bean moon. August is the new corn moon. September, someone harvests. October, someone stores food. November, they give thanks. And December, it's a long night. So you can see there's this interplay of agricultural activities that happen at specific times of the year, according to the lunar calendar, and then foraging activities, in addition to sort of like general descriptions of what's happening in the world. Dakota. So basically what I'm showing here is that like the idea that these names come from different Indigenous traditions is true. A lot of them do, but it's sort of, you know, it's a little bit of an amalgam, and which tradition is most relevant for you where you are is going to differ. So Dakota, and these are more in Minnesota, but University of Minnesota Dakota language teaching specialist Joe Bendixson said, keep in mind some communities use different words. So this is one set of words. January is the difficult moon, February is the raccoon's moon, and again, these are not going to line up exactly because it's a lunar month and a solar month. They're different bodies. March is the snow blindness month. That tells you something about Minnesota, huh? April is the geese laying eggs month. May is the planting month. June is the strawberries ripening moon. July is the chokecherries ripening moon. August is the harvest moon. September is the corn harvest moon. So you can already see, like, again, some of these reflexes of when different agricultural activities will happen for different crops in these moon names. October is the leaves shaking off the trees moon. November is the deer shedding antlers moon. And December is the popping or exploding trees moon. It gets real cold in Minnesota. And then Cherokee, a little discussion of the Cherokee syllabary here. Is probably going to be the most relevant of these names for where I am, because like I mentioned, a lot of Appalachian culture includes some aspects of Cherokee culture, again before horrible genocides, well, I mean, and after. January is the windy moon, February is the stationary moon, March is the strawberry moon. So you can see that is significantly earlier than the violet moon. We are way far south of some of these, like Minnesota is way far north of where we are. So you can see that the name of the moon is dependent on where you are. April is the duck hunting moon. May is the moving large baskets moon. June is the violet moon. July is when the wind turns blue. That's very poetic. August is the drying up moon. September is the moon from a black butterfly, perhaps the black swallowtail Oklahoma state butterfly. So Oklahoma is where many of the Cherokee peoples were resettled. October is the Sala moon. November is the big moon, and December is the frosty moon. So Oklahoma is also south of Minnesota, I believe. Let me look at a map of the US. This is like the 8th time I've had to do this on stream. And by 8th, I mean 2nd. Oh, all right, map of the US. Nope, I need the states. Make it big. Okay, so Oklahoma borders Texas. Yes, that's very far south. It's actually south of Virginia. So the northern border of Oklahoma is just barely north of the southern border of Virginia, because they wanted the panhandle. Whereas Minnesota touches the Canadian border, and that is quite far north. So I think, again, the Cherokee names are probably going to be the most relevant for me where I am, but even then, maybe a little bit early. I don't know. Well, strawberries are one of the first crops in the spring. Strawberries and asparagus usually come in together. Anyway, hey, Ravi. So, all of this is to say, there are a lot of names for different moons. I don't know where folks are getting the names from. I don't know, what their tradition is. I don't know if they know necessarily what their tradition is. Some of it's going to come from England. Some of it's going to come from different, Native American tribes. I don't think that there is... So another thing that's, especially where I am, sometimes, often extremely culturally relevant and important is African-American planting traditions brought over from Africa. And I don't know if I've ever heard a Black farmer or gardener refer to planting by the moon. If I have, I've forgotten it. So there may be an influence here of African planting traditions as well. If they are, I'm not as familiar with them. And my impression is it's maybe not quite as relevant. Robbie says, the topic is confused. I thought it would be some astronomy stuff. I mean, yeah, right? It does have to do with the moon. And we are going to have to do some astronomy for getting, hopefully I can find a nice lookup table. I'm hoping I can find a package. I still haven't decided what language I'm going to do this in, but I'm hoping I can find a package that will I can look up moon dates. That would make my life easier and I don't have to calculate them. But yeah. Anyway, this is the challenge. So it's a couple of things wrapped up into one, right? It's one thing that I don't like about Edge is that it separates out each of your tabs into a separate window for the purposes of Alt Tab, which is a little bit frustrating if you're trying to tab between windows and not tabs. So I think another thing would be maybe toggle between, as an extra feature, different Native American naming systems. Include original language. That seems like a lot of work. And another thing would be use provided location, state or USDA zone level for auto disambiguation. So these are all things that So these are all things here down that I think would be more helpful for other folks. But all I really need to do to have it be something that's useful for me is this, right? So I think one helpful outcome of this is just going to be me gathering names that are synonyms, right? So like the moon that usually falls in January is going to have probably one of these list of names. As we saw, the issue there is that different moons have the same name, and the same moon has lots of different names. So there's definitely, I think this is also going to be something that's good to have. So I think these two can happen first, right? Because this is going to be pretty straightforward. If I type in strawberry moon, I should be told, hey, multiple moons can be strawberry moon. Here are your potential dates. And then you pick from among them. First the warning, and then we can use that to do a logic flow. And then second of all, and this is what I really need, is if somebody tells me blah, 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 worm moon, I can be like, yes, worm moon, open my browser, type in next worm moon, get the date, and be like, around that time of year, and then put it in my calendar. That's my goal. Yeah, this is going to be such a pain. But, I mean, it's already a pain, right? The task that I'm trying to do is difficult. I'm struggling to do it, you know, by looking things up. And I guess I could just ask people, but if I'm doing that every time, like, I'm going to have to learn the system that people are using locally when they're giving me advice so that I know what they mean. Anyway, that's the project. That's what we're doing. And hopefully this makes sense. And like I said, this is a me problem. I don't think most people have this problem. It's also more of a thing, and again, this is just sort of like cultural background for you. It also seems to be much more of a thing, again, with older folks, and then particularly with organic gardeners. So folks who are, you know, like, I don't think they're teaching this at Virginia Tech to their, you know, agriculture students. I think this is more like a folk tradition, and it's a folk tradition that's particularly, you know, been carried over and continued with specifically people who are interested in organic gardening. So I was going to bring it up. I didn't bring it up. Anyway, so I have a book on organic gardening that was written in the 50s that mentions this. And it's one of the earliest references that I can find in writing. There's also some discussion of planting by the moon that more focuses on astrological signs, which I am a little bit less interested in. Comes up less for me. Let me put it that way. The focus is on astrological signs in the Foxfire books, which are a series of like books about Appalachian culture. And then there's the Llewellyn book, which I mentioned. Actually, the Llewellyn book, I want to say the first printing was in the early 1900s. And then the Farmer's Almanac, of course, as well. Very popular resource, mostly among gardeners. And like farmers who are also doing gardening for like themselves. I don't know of anyone who's like, you know, using the Farmer's Almanac and like planting by the moon for like their soybean crops, but maybe they are, right? And I just don't know about it. But it doesn't seem to be as important in like agribusiness as it is for people who are like, I'm canning tomatoes for myself and my family. And a lot of this comes from, you know, a subsistence gardening, subsistence farming tradition, which is why I am very willing to listen to folks who like whose parents needed to garden correctly or they would not have enough food for the winter. So I would love to be able to receive this wisdom and also understand it and perhaps make it a little bit easier for other folks as well. Yes, so I think there's a lot of stuff that we could do. I think the stuff that it makes the most sense to start with doing is compiling this list of moon names and synonyms and sources. So I don't know that this is something where I want to scrape it, specifically because named moons are also kind of a trope in some like fantasy novels. And I bet if we go on to like fan wikis, we're going to get a lot of information about named moons that is not actually true or relevant in my specific context, right? It has a sort of like fanciful kind of archaic feel to it, at least to me. And I think a lot of sort of fantastical authors have latched onto that. So let's go to Wikipedia. Let me take you with me. Here we go. Let's go to Wikipedia and talk a little bit about, you know, some of the other traditions. So I mentioned that I'm mostly interested in the traditions of Eastern North America, particularly Southeastern North America. And I thought it would be helpful to sort of look at some other resources as well. So let's zoom in. So the full moon names, historically month names of the moon are the names of moons, lunations, not necessarily full moons in lunisolar calendars. Since the introduction of the Julian calendar in the Roman Empire and later the Gregorian calendar, let's correct that really quick. Okay, moving on. People no longer perceive month names as moon names. The traditional Old English month names were equated with the names of the Julian calendar from an early time. Some full moons have also developed new names in modern times, such as blue moon, harvest moon, and hunter's moon for the full moons of autumn. No, that's not what yeah. A blue moon is an additional full moon that appears in a subdivision of a year, the third of 4 full moons in a season. Yeah, the blue moon does not occur in autumn. A blue moon occurs when, like, that I knew. So they're always going to occur towards the end of the quarter, right? Because it's the extra one, which means sometimes they happen on Halloween. The harvest moon and hunter's moon for the full moons of autumn. So this is more like a modern thing, it suggests. Lunar eclipses occur only at the full moon. Oh, there was one kind of recently. I vaguely remember that. Maybe today? Maybe there was a lunar eclipse today. One sec, hold up. Lunar eclipse 2022. December 8th. Yes, it was last night. So apologies if you missed the lunar eclipse that was last night, where it was visible. All right. So the harvest and hunter's moons, interesting. So let's look at these because I think this is going to should tell us whether or not we want to use these as the default moon names for these ones. The harvest moon and hunter's moon, although there's already been at least one factual error in this piece so far, so I reserve judgment. The harvest moon and hunter's moon are traditional names for the full moons in late summer and autumn in the northern hemisphere, usually in September and October, respectively. And like I mentioned, these don't always exactly match up with calendars, like solar calendar, Gregorian calendar months. It's celebrated by festivals such as the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival, which is as important as Chinese New Year, or Lunar New Year, as you may hear it. I sort of mentioned that in the US we have the ghosts of a lot of lunar calendars. Obviously, in other cultures, lunar calendars are much more important. I believe the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, or at least draws heavily on it and sort of incorporates some solar elements as well. I think the date of Easter is based on the lunar calendar. I think it's based on like what a full moon is in sort of the Christian tradition as well. So yeah, they hang around a little bit, but I would say that they're not sort of like the business calendars of day to day. Which is why I don't know when the worm moon is. Well, the harvest moon is the full moon nearest the autumnal equinox, occurring anytime within 2 weeks before or after that date. Like I mentioned, it's about a 20-day spread. The hunter's moon is the full moon following it. The names are recorded from the early 18th century, so 1700s. That's pretty late. The OED, oh, good. My voting sticker. The OED entry for harvest moon cites a 1706 reference, and for hunter's moon a 1710 reference, where the term is attributed to the country people. I think that's also how I would attribute the information I'm getting from folks out here. The names became traditional in American folklore, where they are now often popularly attributed to Native Americans. I don't think I've heard that for those moon names. Definitely for like the strawberry and worm moon, particularly, I have definitely heard, but not those two. The Feast of the Hunter's Moon is a yearly festival in West Lafayette, Indiana, held in late September or early October each year since 1968. In 2010, the harvest moon occurred on the night of the equinox itself for the first time since 1991. All full moons rise around the time of sunset, blah, blah, blah. Lunar standstill, blah, blah, blah. Farmer's Almanac. All right. The main Farmer's Almanac from around the 1930s, okay, so it's a little bit later than I thought, began to publish Native American Indian full moon names. And as we, looking at the names that they had, I would say some of these do seem to match this primary source, right? So Strawberry Moon occurred in a lot of these cross-linguistic naming traditions, right? So June moon for the Ojibwe, in the Navajo moon names, ain't none. I guess that makes sense. They are sort of a temperate woodland thing. June in Oneida, June for the Dakota, March for the Cherokee in Oklahoma, which you can see is quite a bit earlier. Oklahoma is further south of where those other two languages are currently spoken. So I think that is actually an attributable name, and I think some of the other ones like question mark. I don't think any of these mention sturgeon, but obviously these are 4 or 5 examples from some of the hundreds of languages and cultures that you may pull from. Anyway, what were we reading? Blah, 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 blah. Some of the names have been adopted by colonial Americans, and that citation is the Daily Telegraph. The Farmer's Almanac, since 1955, published in Maine, but not the same publication as the Maine Farmer's Almanac, continues to do so. An early list of Indian month names, quote unquote, and I'm assuming they're not going to have a closer a more accurate attribution like language, tribe, peoples to whom those names are attributed. It was published in 1918 by Daniel Carter Beard in the American Boys' Books of Signs, Signals, and Symbols for use by the Boy Scouts. Some names have garnered currency in American folklore. They appear in print more widely outside of the almanac tradition from the 1990s in popular publications about the moon, like Mysteries of the Moon. Okay, so this might be a good reference for me, actually, by Patricia Haddock, gives an extensive list of such names along with the individual tribal groups they were supposedly associated with. So I definitely would need to learn more about the sources that Patricia used. Haddock supposes that certain colonial American moon names were derived from Algonquin languages, which were formerly spoken in the territory of New England, while others are based in the European tradition. For example, Milk Moon, Mother Moon, and Hare Moon have no parallels in supposed native names, while the name of November, Beaver Moon, is supposedly based on the Algonquin languages. There are beavers in the UK. I should say they are not native to there. Although most of them are dead. I think they were extinct in the UK and have recently been reintroduced into Scotland, is my general understanding of beaver ecology in the UK. Not an area of my expertise. If someone else knows more, feel free to correct me. All right, the long night moon is the last full moon of the year and the one nearest the winter solstice. All right, so here are some of the names. So some of them are from Beard, which is that 1918 list, and then some of them are from the Farmer's Almanac, and it looks like we don't have Patricia's names. So this Lenten moon name is like absolutely European, right? Like the moon closest to the start of Lent, I'm guessing. Oh, but Lent is lunar as well, right? Because Easter is lunar, and Lent is what, the days before Easter? 40 days? Does that sound right? Any Christians in the chat can let me know. Okay, but here we have some various names. So March, Wind, Little Grass, Sore Eyes, Worm Moon, Crow Moon, Sap Moon, Crust Moon. Oh, I do remember seeing one about that. So March being the hard crust of snow moon in Ojibwe. And then there was one about sore eyes, if I remember. Let me see. Okay, Dakota, March for snow blindness, which, okay, yeah. So at least this example does seem to line up. April, ducks, goose eggs, seed moon, sprouting moon, pink moon, frog moon, fish moon. Do they have the multiple frog moons here? They don't. Corn planting moon, grass moon, mother's moon. Okay, well, this has been fun. I think because I definitely want the attributions, because I think some of these may be malarkey. I think some of these may be things that actually people don't say, and I would like the things that actually people do say, and specifically say here where I am, because that's going to be the most relevant to me. I think what makes the most sense is let's just kick it off and do some Pro strats, copying and pasting. So a lot of these seem to be anchored on the month that they occur in of the Gregorian calendar, right? So the January moon, the February moon, etc. So I guess we can continue with that tradition because it seems to be what most folks are doing. And if you're anchoring moons on a quarterly basis, the January moon will always occur in January. The February moon will always occur in February. The March moon may also occur in February. The January moon will always occur in January. The February moon could occur in January or February. The March moon could occur in February or March. And then you may have an extra moon in March, a blue moon in March. So I think it makes sense. It does make sense to anchor this to the Gregorian calendar because I do want to get the dates out in the Gregorian calendar. So, what I'm gonna do is start doing some copying and pasting and with different headings. So Wikipedia. I'm going to do this as a flat text file first. That pause was me thinking about whether it makes more sense does it make more sense to have these sorted by source, or does it make more sense to have them sorted by month and then annotate the source? I think I want this to be tabular. Yes. I think I started, can I just, let's see. Let me get rid of this. I haven't written anything I care about yet. If I just, can I rename you? What if I say please? Can I make you a different file? Sure can. All right. So let's just do it name, month, source. And actually, I may have commas in the sources, so let's do a TSV. Rachel, are you writing a TSV raw? Yeah. And the reason I'm doing a TSV tab separated value and not, was F2? Yes, and not comma separated value, okay, thank you, is because we're probably gonna have commas and sources at some time, so I am okay with that. So now, time to, you know, as we do. Da-da. All right, and then that one is for January. And this one is for January. And the source is Beard Wikipedia. All right. No. See, we've already used a comma. All right, great. So now I just need to do this a lot. Hey, Carlos. Okay, so next up we had the wolf moon. We had the old moon. We had the moon after Yule. So this would be the first moon after the, it would be the first moon after. So remember when I said that if you're cementing, like anchoring it to quarters, you're always going to have, the month is always going to be the same, right? Like the January moon is always going to happen in January. Well, there are 10 or 9 days after Yule, which is the winter solstice, in December, in which you could have a moon. So the moon after Yule could definitely be a December moon as well. I don't know if that's true of all of these. Oh, okay, let's, I'm gonna look back at this, but if we look at this December, in this table, the moon after Yule is not suggested as another potential name, as something that could potentially happen in September. What about the Farmer's Almanac itself? December? Drift, frost, trees, horse, moon, winter, full cold moon. All right, no. January? No. Oh, interesting. So the name that they say comes from the full... You can see why I want to automate this. Okay. So Wikipedia says that this moon after Yule name comes from the Farmer's Almanac. I'm looking at the Farmer's Almanac list of moon names. Guess what's not on there? The moon after Yule. Do they even mention Yule? No, it doesn't come up. Does it say specifically that these are the Native American moon names? No, a guide to traditional moon names. Every full moon name from this year from the old Farmer's Almanac. Okay, you know what? I am just going to, for this first pass, I am not going to use these quote names for the Farmer's Almanac. It has a clarification needed. Looking at the Farmer's Almanac list of names, it's not in there. And I don't want to add just random stuff. One sec. Let me give myself some to-dos. Add Farmer's Almanac names. Add English/UK names. Some are anchored on solar events. And of course, you know, I said that the Gregorian and Julian calendar were solar calendars. They're only kind of solar calendars. They don't always match up, right? Like, there's usually a couple days of wiggle room when the solar events happen on this supposedly solar calendar. All right. I'm fine, and I'm calm. So I'm just gonna start with these names according to Beard because it gives us something to start with, you know? All right, so raccoon is for February. Also bear spots on the ground is from February. Going back over here where I'm typing. February. I paste. All right. Robbie says you can try to copy and paste it in an Excel type software and you can save the file. Yes, but I want it in a different format. So I'm gonna have to copy and paste it a bunch anyway, and I might as well just enter it in my specific format that I want it in to begin with. Especially because I'm only doing, you know, 2 per line. So these are from, actually, you know what? And I'm also gonna notes on sources. Just so I know what I meant by things. Beard, Wikipedia. And you might be like, Rachel, why are you taking all these notes? You don't need to take all these notes. Believe me, I do. Guide for the Boy Scouts as extracted on the Wikipedia page for the full moon. Aye. All right, moving on. Wait, that's a comma. It's okay. It's okay. It's a TSV. Why is this one 2? It should clearly be 3. See, this is also why I'm not going to copy and paste, because they're, oh wait, no, this is actually March, because the way that they are organizing this table is actually also inconsistent, and I want my data to be consistent. All right. And sure, maybe I could find another resource where the things are organized a little bit better, but then I wouldn't know the source for them. And I do care about that, actually. I do want to know the source for these things because I want it to be useful. All right, so we had ducks and goose eggs. And those are going to be for April. Keeping in mind that not all of these things are going to be, you know, and these are going to be for May, are going to be actually linked to a specific Gregorian calendar month. Corn planting and strawberry. And I think I have most often heard the strawberry moon be referred to as the June moon, even though our good strawberry season here in Virginia, I'm actually going to say that this is 3 separate moons. Our good strawberry season in Virginia here is, ooh, I went a long time without doing things. Corn planting and strawberry are both June. It's usually wrapped up by May, honestly. It tends to get quite hot here. These should be both July. And then August is the harvest moon, which is pretty different. Okay, so what they're saying is the bull buffalo rather than the cow buffalo. I think I'm going to keep it like that. I think that makes sense. And then it shows that the cow buffalo is the marked term, marked here in the linguistic sense, being the one that is given a linguistic, you know, additional information to show that it is not the one that people considered the default, right? So sort of like how people don't like you and like it when you call them a lady scientist. It's because you are you are implying that scientist is male by default. October. Leaf falling. So it is November here now for us, and it has been a pretty warm November. It was 80 yesterday, which is what, high 20s, 30s? I don't know. And then December, and now I'm gonna have to go back and add the sources for all of these, because if I just have a big list of names and you have no idea where I got them from, you don't know if it's gonna be relevant for you. We might come back and want to do, you know, additional stuff with where people are from and which name we give them. So, yep. Okay. And I don't really want to build a custom like scraper or like automated what's not to do this, because I'm going to be getting data from a bunch of different sources that it's going to look very inconsistent. Not all of them are going to be based on month names. So yes, I could automate this. No, I don't think it's going to save me any more time, because I'd have to, you know, reorganize it for each source of information that I'm getting. All right, so those are from the Beard Wikipedia. And then I'm gonna start doing the almanac ones. No sound sources in moon_synonyms.tsv. Nope. Yep. Names provided by the Farmer's Almanac. On their page. All right. Is that how you spell almanac? It looks wrong to me, but I guess it's right because I'm looking back and forth and it looks correct. Yeah. So I'm just going to be going back and forth for the Farmer's Almanac. So the full wolf moon. Okay, so they are gonna have full in front of each of the names. So I'm just gonna ignore that. I'll show you what I mean. So they have full in front of each of these names, right? Full wolf, full snow, full worm, full pink. I'm just gonna ignore that and only use the name that they provide without full in front of it. So if you're wondering what I'm doing, that's that. The wolf moon. Actually, I can also probably take out moon. Ugh. Right. So I think what actually makes the most sense here is do. And can I do other things with it? I wanna, okay, yep. Is that gonna replace all of them? Yes, Troll Hunter. Fabulous. And then will this do it in selection? Natural word. Control Shift F maybe? Replace enter, replace all, reserve case. If any of you are big into VS Code and can give me hints on how to replace just in selection. Actually, you know what? This is worth looking up. This is going to save me some time. VS Code, replace all in selection. Oh, also, I also want to remove the trailing space. Well, I've found the Mac shortcut, which is not helpful for me because I am, in fact, not using a Mac. All right. Find with args. Find with. All right. Control H. Nope, that did everything. Interesting. Replace all with empty string. I think it's working when I'm replacing with nothing. So the issue here is, so you see how this one is called the big moon? I don't think I actually want to get rid of that. Actually, maybe I do. Maybe I don't want moon at all. So what I was trying to do was replace just in this selection without getting rid of this moon. So you can see that I have this selected, right? And my options are change all occurrences. And if I replace all, it gets rid of the things outside of the selection as well, which I don't think I wanted them to do. I'm willing to live with that though, for the moment. I think that's okay. All right. And then that's going to be January, all of those ones. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the first one of each of these, and then I'll finish editing it in a thing later. As long as I don't reorganize it, I should be able to get the information I want back. Is that a full tab? It is. Excellent. All right. Cool. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but for February, which is the snow. That's the one. Thank you. And this was all, that's the one. Oh, I love tab complete. I know I've talked about this before, but my God, it keeps being true. Raccoon. Uh-oh. So raccoon, okay, raccoon was for February from this beard almanac, from this beard source as well. I don't know if they were using beard as a source, perhaps. Get rid of all those. We're gonna get rid of Space Moon. Yep, all of them. All right, there we go. And then next up is gonna be for March, which they call the Worm Moon. Traditionally thought to be named after earthworms of the warming spring soil. Alternatively, in the late 1700s, Jonathan Carver wrote that this moon actually refers to a different sort of worm, larvae, which emerge from the bark of trees and other winter hideouts in this time. And we have a bunch of alternative names. We're gonna place all. Oh wait, I can up, right? And what is that? Control Alt Enter. Fabulous. Love finding a good keyboard shortcut. All right, so that was, what are we up to? March, April. When that April? From the prelude? When that opera with pilgrimage. Yeah, the prelude of the Canterbury Trails. You'll know what I mean. Maybe you don't. It's from the introduction of the Canterbury Tales, which is in Middle English. So replace all, and then wait, control. Wait, no, I want the space. Control Shift Enter? No. Alt Shift Enter? No. Control Alt Enter. Control Alt Enter. Okay, I just need to remember that. Moon when the streams are again navigable. And I think it's okay that I didn't get rid of these leading ones. I don't know who's gonna see, like, I've heard about the goose moon, right? Like goose moon. Geese moon, I guess. Anyway. I did the first one of those, right? April, the pink moon. Okay. Pink referring to the flowers, pinks. Oh, what I was saying was that it's a very well-known poem. Where are we on? We're on April, May, right? May comes after April? Sure does. Flower. May. Almanac. And it starts talking about April. So is Shift Alt Enter? No, Control Alt Enter. Nope, wrong button. One sec. Control Alt Enter. Control Alt Enter. There. Control Alt Enter. Fabulous. And then strawberry. Probably, I'd say strawberry and harvest moon are probably the most well-known moon names, at least for me, or that I hear the most often. And it looks like, sort of looking at the cross-linguistic evidence from the various languages and language families that we looked at earlier, it seems to be fairly... There seems to be a strawberry moon in most of these traditions. When that moon occurs, I believe, varies based on when there are strawberries. And those might be true strawberries, or they might be the... Okay, yeah, that was right. Or they might be the... Control Alt Enter. Yeah. Control Alt Enter. Or they may be, sometimes they're called false strawberries, sometimes they're called Indian strawberries. I don't know whether or not they are actually in the same genus as strawberries. This must be one who hoes, right? Like a person who hoes? Surely that's what they mean. But they don't really taste like strawberries. They don't taste like much. Maybe a little bit like celery, kind of. Control Enter. All right, and then we have August, which they call the sturgeon moon, which I will be honest with you, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say out loud in my life. But again, above the fall line, and the, you know, and the almanac, right? Where I heard most of where I got like most of my gardening advice was even more above the fall line in Fluvanna County, which is up in the Piedmont. Yes, just like the Piedmont in in the Alps, except here it is not the Alps. They are the foothills of, but instead the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, the oldest mountains in the world. They are. If you ever get a chance to come visit us, I highly recommend spending some time up in the Blue Ridge. They're really something else. Da, 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 da. Yep. All right, we're up to September. We're getting there. October, hunters. There we go. And then this is October, I said, right? Yep. And then the almanac. And I could do it all at once, but I'd have to remember where the boundaries go, and sometimes that is the type of thing that I find quite challenged to do. Challenging. B-E-A-V-E-R. 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 Beaver. November, and then that was from the almanac. A little bit of apparently the tradition is once you were done with the almanac for a year, or once you had gotten to the date that you needed, before that was the pages were fair game for alternate uses. Perhaps in the outhouse is how the the stories go. I have very thankfully never had to live anywhere with an outhouse, so not my lived experience, but not that far from it either. Sorry, I keep opening my task manager by hitting delete and not enter. All right. So I think this is a fairly good start. I think the next thing that we can do just really quickly right now is add another column for whether or not it's a duplicate, and then we'll deal with that bridge when we come to it. So we so far have two sources. The last source that I wanted to add was the sort of traditional English names, so I'm gonna see if I can find a good source for that. These are going to be a little bit more challenging because they are not closely tied to specific, specific dates. This uses the almanac names. University College London. That's probably going to have the... All right. So if I pop you back over to this page, there we go. Oh, huh? It's small. It's wee. Let me make it less wee. All right, and zoom in quite a bit. There we go. Okay, so this is from University of London.ac, ucl.ac.uk, UCAP sjo-moon/index.html. Is there more information on this source? Who is it from? From Stephen Boyle at the UCL Observatory, University of College London. From 2004, last updated 2022. Okay, so this seems to be a fairly recently updated source from someone who works in star stuff, so I'm inclined to believe it. Old almanacs in England used a series of poetic names. And if you're wondering, so almanac is like, I don't think I mentioned this. You may or may not be familiar with them. They're like a a book of the year that tells you like various dates and what to do on that date, and they are generally very specifically focused on farming and gardening. So like, this is when you sow your barley, this is when you sow your oats, this is when you sow your pumpkins, whatever, this is when you harvest your cucumbers or whatever, right? They're like, it helps you figure out when in the year to do various tasks in the garden, which is what I want to do, which is why I need more information to know when these dates are. This begins with the moon after Yule, the name given to the first full moon after the winter solstice, and finished with the moon before Yule, the last full moon before the following winter solstice. There are 12 full moons in most years, which means that 3 full moons occur during most seasons. One season in 10, however, contains four full moons. The third moon that occurs in such a season is now called a blue moon. I note that this is not the only definition of the term blue moon that is now in common use. This is how I would... this is my use. Oh, I'm happy that you are learning a lot, Mandel. All right. The final quarter of 2010 is an example of a season that contains a blue moon, as the term is used in this article. The 9th full moon of that year follows the autumn equinox by a little more than 6 hours. It is the first full moon following the autumn equinox, so it is termed the harvest moon of 2010. The 12th full moon precedes the winter solstice by just over 15 hours, so it is termed the moon before Yule. Thus, in 2010, the close proximity of the 9th full moon to the autumn equinox and the 12th full moon to the winter solstice leaves room in the season for an extra moon. This is the blue moon that fell on 2010, November 21st. That is a way to write a date. Year first. All right. Okay, so this is has the dates for... Ooh, this might actually be a really good resource for us to use in our next thing, which is to try and figure out what the dates are. So I'm gonna... What would I call this? UCL, I think, is probably the best name for the source. Names provided by... What was the name? Oil at the UCL Observatory. Right, so if we pop back to that, looking at, let's look at this year. Let's look at 2022, right? So we have no blue moons. The moon before Yule here occurs in December, and the moon after Yule occurs in January. Does the moon after Yule ever occur in December, or will it in the nearish future? Because if the moon after Yule always occurs in January, then I don't really need to worry about it. Or like almost always. Beans. All right, so in 2013, the moon after Yule occurred in December 28th. So these seasons here are astronomical solar seasons, right? It's targeted, it's... Okay, I think what we can do here. So, okay, so my thinking is, what we can do is we can... Okay, so this happened in 2013. How often does this happen? January, December. It happened in 2008. It happened in 2005. Fairly often. Okay. Well, this stinks. The Lenten moon can occur in February or March. But so I think what we need to do is we need to give each of these moons 2 months, right? Because it can occur in December or January. It can't occur in February. The moon after Yule. The wolf moon can occur in January or February. It can't occur in March. The Lenten moon can occur in February or March. It can't occur in April. So I think what we need to do in order to keep our data fairly tidy is, because these are meh. we go. Hitting the wrong button. I clearly need more explanatory symbols. And I know that some of these are empty. I'm gonna go back and fix them later. So in order to keep our data tidy, what we need to do, I mean, I'm assuming the Farmer's Almanac is also not lying to us, right? Because they're not using the moon after Yule, but they are using the wolf moon and saying that occurs in January, but sometimes it can occur in February. So I think what we need to do is this. Okay, so the moon after Yule can occur in December. However, it can also occur in January. And these are both from UCL. Okay, and then the next moon, which is the wolf moon, can occur, no, wolf, there we go, can occur, I guess the problem with doing a TSV by hand is that sometimes you trigger autocomplete when you don't mean to. Can occur in January. Or it can occur in February. Etc. So I'm just going to do these like so. Lenten, egg, presumably when chickens come out of molt. And of course, I keep saying of course, the UK is much further north, and if we're talking Scotland, much, much further north. So the hay moon here is the June moon, which sometimes we did hay in June, sometimes July, sometimes August, just depended. Fruit here in the US. These are going to be slightly off, but I think people will still use them. And then the harvest, and then the hunters, which we had, and then the moon before Yule, which... All right, so these are the names, and then we need to go through and do the rest of the things. So, right, so the Lenten moon can be in February or March. And the egg moon can be in March or March comes after April. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then the milk moon could be in April. Oh, what a pain in the butt. It can be April or May to figure out all of these slightly incongruent calendar systems that people use to talk about information that I want to know. I need to know this information, and yet. All right, there we go. So flower May or June. And then the hay can be in June or July. Hay. No. July. There may or may not be some tabbing errors in here. All right, July. I'm just gonna do this by hand to try and get ahead of those tabbing errors. July or August. Fruit, August. Also, shout out to those of you who are in your life trying to August, September, thank you, figure out how to deal with both a lunar and solar calendar as things that are important to you and, you know, require you to keep them. What a pain. All right, and then have I just written September 3 times in a row? I sure have. September, October. October, for November. And the moon before Yule can be November or December, and that takes us back to the top. Okay. I think this is good for getting started. All right, and I do need to go back and actually let me do this. So I've done that. I've done that. I need to finish filling out blanks in moon.synonyms for almanac dates. Almanac names. All right, so I've had a thought. And my thought is this, that we need to go back and look at the almanac page. All right. When we are looking at the almanac page, when we have two things that have the same name, right? Like, I'm looking for some examples of that. Harvest moon and harvest moon. Oh, do we do full corn moon? Is it in here? It ain't. All right, let's add it. So that is for September in the almanac section. I believe that is actually referenced in Pocahontas. I think there's a song that has that lyric in it about the full corn moon. Okay, so here we have the full corn moon, and here we have the corn moon, and these are next to each other. For September, we have the harvest moon and then the harvest moon. So those are next to each other. Here we have one about rice. Here we have one about rice. Okay. Here we have one about corn. Here we have one about corn. You can't see my cursor. Well, basically I'm saying here is corn and here is corn, and these are next to each other. Here's also corn. I get it. Corn's very important, and I'm not being facetious. Corn is extremely important. No arguing that. Or like the worm there. Okay, February. We talked about frogs. There were a couple frog moons, right? Okay, yeah, so these are next to each other, April and May. Okay, so I'm wondering if these repeated names, because not all of them repeat, but some of them do. So I might suppose that the repeated names may have to do with calendar systems that are linked to solar events as well. Because if you're not linked to a solar event, you're not going to have blue moons, right? But if you're not linked to a solar event, everything's going to slowly slide to one side because the lunar and solar calendars don't actually link up quite that well. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Because I'm thinking about what's going to go in this column over here, which is currently empty, about whether or not it's a duplicate. And I think some of the duplicate names may be actual duplicate names, right? Like strawberry from different cultures or different languages or different areas. And then some of them may be this name can occur in more than one month, which is a different thing, right? That's not a duplicate. That's the same moon, but the month name is not linking up well. Another way I thought of doing it is by the number, right? Like this is the first moon, this is the second moon, like the English system does it. However, to do that, you need to have a specific date that you are, anchoring on. And certainly for the almanac days, we don't have that. They don't give us one. So I guess the date that they are anchoring on is January 1st. As opposed to in this English system where the date that they are anchoring on is December 21st, 22nd, 20th in there, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. Oh. Okay, I think this is a good start. So I will do this off screen. We've done this. I can never remember the markdown syntax. Is it like so? One sec. Markdown syntax for checkbox. Markdown checkbox, Linux hint. I'd love a Linux hint. Okay, so it's space. So I just want to mark that this may or may not be the right syntax. That's okay. We'll deal with that when we come to it. So these two are done. We also, I'm just going to add this just to write down that we did it. Add names from Wikipedia. There we go. Okay. And then the next thing that I think we need to do is detect duplicates, right? So then, yep. And then I think the other thing that we need to do is create text input interface. Actually, before that, what we need to do is pick programming language. So my kind of options there might be R plus Shiny, Python plus, I don't know, Flask. I don't know, what would y'all use for a super light, because my ideal user experience is I open a browser, I type in an address, I have at the address a little text input box, I put text into the input box, I hit enter, and I get a date back with maybe a warning. That's what I'm looking for. So next thing I need to do is find library for getting full moon dates. I'm not doing that by hand, and I guarantee someone has done it. And I yes, that seems like such a pain in the butt, and I don't want to do it. And I'm just going to assume that someone has done it and that I can find it. It seems like a pretty good assumption. You know, full moon dates are important for like a lot of stuff. So, Kaku says, I would like to gain experience data cleaning. Are there any courses that give certifications for data cleaning? It's a good question. The Kaggle one might. Let's see. I don't know if they give a certification or not. Let's pull it up. Rachel, that's you. It is me. I wrote the course. I'm quite a fan of it. Yeah, so there is a certificate for that. So if you're interested, it's on Kaggle. I'll pop you the link in the chat. And it is, I mean, one of the, I should say I wrote the lessons. It's been a while since, you know, I was involved in this, and it looks like they took out the bit about file formats, perhaps. Because I'm pretty sure when I did it, the first lesson was on, yeah, you can see Alexis rewrote a lot of them and did all the exercises and stuff. Alexis is great. We talked about tabular versus, you know, different data formats. Handling missing data, scaling and normalization, parsing date, character encoding, inconsistent data entry. Last one's about fuzzy matching. Okay, well, at one point there was part of this that was about different data formats, you know, tabular or tree or unstructured, etc. But yeah. Yeah, you're very welcome, Kahaku. I hope you like it. And I'll say I wrote the original lessons, but obviously Alexis has done a lot of work to improve them. So any errors are mine, any delight is hers. All right, so yeah, I think this is a good set of like next steps for us. So we're gonna finish filling out the blanks. I can do that off stream. Detect duplicates. I think we can do that together. That's kind of fun and interesting. Pick a programming language. This detecting duplicates, I'm probably going to do in R. That doesn't mean we have to do anything else in R. That's just like a quick data task. It's whatever. Picking a programming language, R and Shiny, Python, Flask. Question mark. I'll think on it. I'll do some poking around. I might talk to some of my friends in web dev and be like, help me, I'm a baby. I am not a front end person. I've mentioned this before. So whatever makes the front end easiest is probably what I'll go for. Create the text input interface. We can test it a little bit. Find a library for getting full moon dates. Match input text to specific moon name. Fuzzy? Exact. So we could do either of those. So I mentioned that I use Todoist for a lot of my to-do list making, and they have a pretty forgiving interface, right? Where they do a pretty forgiving interface, but it does do exact matching on substrings. And a lot of the time-based stuff tends to be done with rules under the hood, right? Like Duckling, which is a library for time date stuff and extraction. And NLU specifically, you know, someone writes a time and you pick out the time. Look at what other libraries are using. I want to say Duckling, at least part of Duckling is written in Haskell though, and there's no way I'm learning Haskell for this project. Absolutely not. I refuse. No way. So I think it makes sense to just sort of like, I don't know. I'll figure something out. We might do that together. If you have any recommendations, feel free to hit me up. And I think that's gonna be fine. And then moon name to date. Next full one. So I think we're gonna really, you know, make our problem as narrow as possible. So it will be specifically for the date that I am putting it in, the next one of those moons, what is the date of that moon, right? So if I today was like, when is the next worm moon? It would tell me the worm moon next year. And if I said, when's the worm moon? It'll tell me the worm moon next year. And if I said, what's the last worm moon? It'll tell me the worm moon next year. I'm not going to do any sort of like targeting, moving around the timeline, figuring out which one to tell them. It'll always be the next one. Because that's, for me at least, that's what's most relevant. Like, and if the next one, you know, is 11 and a half months away, I know that I have just missed one, and I will rely on people to use their critical thinking skills to figure that out, especially for this little pilot project, getting the MVP out there. So I think it's also helpful to tell people what the source of that information was, because that might also be something that's particularly relevant to them. And then as we add more sources, return date and source. And the reason I want to do this is, again, also for me, because if I get like the English one, I know it's probably going to be a little bit less relevant for me than the Farmer's Almanac one. But if I start to include like lots of different names from different, you know, tribes, the tribes that are closer physically to where I am are going to be the most relevant for gardening things, because the climate is going to be the most similar. So that's my sort of general idea. Yeah. So that's what I got. I think we made pretty good progress. I think we've done pretty good scoping. We've done a lot of the tedious work of getting these various names, and I'll tell you right now, this is not even most of them, but hopefully it is enough that we can do a serious start. And then also another thing that we're going to need to think about is moon name. Figure out what to do about moon names that are tied to solar events and not Julian calendar, e.g. first moon after Yule. Actually, I think I need to do that before detecting duplicates, right? I think that's actually going to need to be pretty far up in our chain of action, because what we do with this is going to help us determine what we're going to do to detect the duplicates and what counts as a duplicate and what counts as a duplicate and what is just a moon that can fall into multiple months. And from looking at the historical data from the UCL site, it looks like that happens, every couple of years. So not rarely enough that we can ignore it, unfortunately. All right, so I think that's all I have for today. My voice is starting to go a little bit. I don't know if you can tell. But yeah, I think we've got a really good start, and we'll pick up on it next week and actually do some programming. I mean, from the title of the stream, I don't think anyone expected any programming today. But next week I may in the meantime pick what sort of software tooling I want to do with it. We may do that on stream if that's interesting to folks to sort of see my thought process and like going through stuff, but I'm probably going to ask around. And then I will put this up on GitHub. And when I get around to it, it'll happen eventually, probably. So that is all I have for you today. Before we head out, I do want to say a huge thank you to all my wonderful monthly coffee supporters who help make this possible. Thank you to all of you over there. I really appreciate you. Yeah, thank you. And if you're interested in joining, my coffee is right underneath me here, RCTATMAN. I'd be delighted to have your support if you are able. So thank you once again to all my supporters. Thank you to all of you for watching. I hope you have a great week. I will see you on Thursday for our coffee chat, where we'll talk about research papers, news, court cases, legislation that might be relevant to us as technologists, professional stuff. We'll probably talk about Twitter a little bit. Should be a good time. So I'll see you there on Thursday, which is going to be at the same time as this was. We did have a time change in the US recently. And I hope to see you there. And if not, see you back on next Tuesday for the next chapter of the Moon NLP saga. So thank you so much for joining today. I hope this was fun, entertaining. You had a good time. You learned something maybe. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.